Welcome to the modern pet retailer, where independent pet retailers come together to run better businesses, make smarter decisions, and stop leaving money on the table. Welcome to the modern pet retailer. Today we're talking all things online ads. So we're talking social media and Google specifically. Most independent retailers either do not run ads or they've boosted posts on social and they wonder why nothing happens. There's no strategy behind it, there's no planning. And the boost button is literally just a pay Facebook button. There's really no value to it unless you're trying to get likes and vanity metrics. So, we're going to talk today about all the different things and all the different strategies you can implement to put together good quality ads and have them actually drive traffic to your store. I hear a lot of retailers complain about not being able to afford to run online ads. And the good news is a small budget spent strategically will go a lot farther than if a national chain like Petco or PetSmart spent the same exact budget. So we have a lot of advantages since we're trying to only target small little local areas that 200, $500 goes a lot farther. So if you've run a paid ad online before and you felt like it didn't work for me, it won't work for me, I want you to throw out those mindsets because it can absolutely work. It works for any other business that does it. We just have to do it the right way. So we're going to jump into some of the numbers you need to know before you start running your first ads. That way, you know if they're successful, you know if you're spending too much or you could be spending more. The first number we want to know is our ROAS, return on ad spend. You can't manage what you don't measure. So we're going to measure these ads in the simplest way to know if it's working in the short term is with your ROAS number. So the formula that we use, revenue generated by the ad divided by what you spent on the ad. And that's literally the only cost we're going to factor into this number. So an example would be you spend $200 on an ad and it brings you $20 in sales. Your ROAS was $2.60. For every dollar you spent, you got $2.60 back. A ROAS of 3 or higher is generally considered healthy for a retail business since we have such low margins in retail. So below 2 means your ad is barely covering its cost. But ROAS only tells us the revenue side of things. It does not account for the actual spend. So if you offered a discount, you'd have to factor that in. It just gives you a short-term algorithm to know if things are working and when to bump things up, when to back things off and fix problems. So using ROAS, it's short-term thinking. We're just trying to judge the success of an ad. So a real-world example, if you spent $200 for our local area, that would get you about $6.60 spend a day, about a 5 to 7 mile radius, which is our target area. And for 30 days, it reaches about 40 to 50,000 people expectedly. So that's a good little test point for any ad for our specific area. If you're in a more rural area and you need to expand that mileage, ideally a rural, you'll have a less population, so your target size should be relatively the same or might balance out, or you might find that it balances even if you expand your mileage. But $200 is a really good test to start with. The next factor after ROAS is we want to do our whole cost analysis. So if your average ticket value is $65 and your gross margin is 40% on that $65, we keep $26 per transaction roughly. And that's just a rough average. To break even on a $200 ad, you would divide your ad cost by your gross margin dollars per transaction. So if we spent 200 and we want to divide that by 26, gives us roughly 7.7 people we need. So we rounded up to 8 customers to justify the ad. So now you can ask yourself honestly, did this ad bring 8 people in? Do you have confirmed when people walk through the door, did they show you the ad? Did they process the coupon from the ad? Whatever the lead was in the ad, like we talked last week, did they show it to you? Can you confirm that 8 people walked in? If yes, you broke even or better. If you did better, then you know that's a pretty profitable ad. If you brought in 5, you lost money in the ad in the short term, but you still acquired 5 potentially good quality real customers. And if you brought in 2 or less, we need to evaluate either the ad copy, the targeting, creative, the offer. Something just didn't click with your ideal customer that they wanted to convert and come in. Now, all of this is very short term thinking. We're just judging to see if the ad we're running currently is paying for itself. Dave, why would you tell a retailer not just to look at the short term when it comes to judging the success of online advertisements, but also the long term?
When you look at the break-even analysis and the 8 customers, there's an online marketer, Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels. He would call the initial ad, if you can cover the cost of the ads themselves, a self-liquidating offer, essentially positioning the whole advertising campaign specifically to cover your costs. So you could structure that way more in depth than what Tiff went over. But Tiff's high level view here is really important to consider. But it is just the short term thinking. What's happening on the first couple of weeks you're running the ad, and what's your real measurable return on that very specific investment today, tomorrow, the next day. But really, when you acquire, even let's use the bottom line of 2 customers, which is probably a broken sales funnel or headline or offer, is even if you were to only capture 2 customers that turned into solid customers for you, you start to look at the long-term math and it still can make sense. You spent $200, you got 2 long-term, lifelong customers with dogs or cats that are going to be shopping with you for many years. And you have to start to think in that longer term framework, because you're not an advertising company, right? You're a pet supply retail, and the cost of acquisition of a customer, even if you don't think about it today, we still have costs of acquisition, even if it's referral and word of mouth, right? You apply the best service possible. Your customers refer their neighbors and friends. There's a cost to that. That's having good employees. That's having a well-stocked store. That's having good pricing. All of these are costs. So it turns from the advertising job to your job in the store to convert anybody that walks in based off your initial ad to a long-term customer. And that's the sweet spot of making the short-term ROAS thinking to the lifetime and long-term thinking way more valuable. So we shift from advertising dollars and getting people through the door. That's just step one, to converting them to lifelong customers. And I think that's probably the better way to look at the total advertising spend and value.
So, since we want to talk about long term value, we want to try and put some kind of number to this. And the way to do that is to factor in what the customer lifetime value is, or the LTV. And that is going to be what they spend over the lifetime of hopefully a long, happy, healthy pet and shopping at your store. So if a customer comes in about twice a month and spends about $65 per visit, they stay with you for 3 years on average. The LTV is roughly $4,680. Now, of course, you don't get that right when you spend the money on the ad. You're going to get that over a very long period of time. But ideally, we keep stacking these people and we keep increasing our monthly and recurring revenue by gaining and acquiring these customers through the online ads. So the second number that you want to compare to your lifetime value is your CAC, your customer acquisition cost. This is how much you paid to acquire the customer. So if you spent that $200 on the ad, like we mentioned before with the ROAS, and that brought in 10 customers, your CAC for that particular ad is $20 per customer. A healthy LTV to CAC ratio for a small retail business is generally 3 to 1. If it's below 3 to 1, your acquisition costs are just too high. They're eating into your margin and your long-term value. So we have to, again, evaluate how much money we're spending. Are we spending it on the right ads? And we also want to make sure that we're targeting the correct customer. You can afford to spend more to acquire that right customer that you might think, because of the short-term costs, the small compared to the long-term value. The keyword is the right customer. A deal hunter with no loyalty has a very low LTV. If they're just in here to get the quick free bag of food that you offered in your ad and they're never going to visit again, there's no value there. You want to make sure that we're building the ads to target the educated pet owner who trusts you, recommends you, and has a very high LTV. Dave, for a pet store owner that has never run paid ads before and is hearing about all this for the first time, what would you recommend they actually commit financially to start? Not to just win or but just to learn and what percentage of revenue that makes sense as starting test budgets so they can figure out what works without feeling like they're throwing money away.
So every store is going to be a little bit different. There's an industry standard for retail, not just pet retail, that you should be spending 2% of your gross revenue for a mature business. It would be higher if you're brand new. I don't know that it would necessarily be lower unless you're extremely stable and you've created an incredible word of mouth. But 2% of $1 million business is $20,000 a year. That sounds like a lot of money, and it might be. And I would not focus on that as a starting point, like you asked, if is I think there's a sweet spot when you're looking at, especially social, where too little doesn't work and too much makes it harder to learn. I like your idea of a $200 initial budget. Maybe it's even $100. And what you need is enough traffic to be able to validate what you're doing is moving people. So that's why if you do too little and you know, if your numbers were what, 40, 50,000 people, if you're plugging your stuff into social media and their advertising campaigns are telling you that you're going to hit 1,000 people, it's probably not enough. So finding the dollars that get you into probably at least the 10,000 views point starts to give you some information about how effective your social campaign is. What are you offering? What are your headlines? What are you doing to get your potential customers' attention away from scrolling? And starting at that low point, again, let's just use $100 as an example, and then testing who you're bringing in, making sure Tiff just referred to it as the right customer. You don't want to advertise. We mentioned free iPads to sign up. Well, that's useless because you're going to find a lot of people that want free iPads, but they're not necessarily your best customers. So you kind of have to think about the same thing is if you are a store that focuses on high levels of customer service and education and quality products, be careful of initial ads that do free, 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 because you might find, unless it's free educational content, right? That might have some value. Introduction to you as a quality retailer who has knowledgeable staff is great, and then drive them in that way. So that would be more along the quote unquote right customer for stores that want to focus on quality of retail. So just think about, you will have to play with the number because it's going to matter how many people are in your region, and then play with your budget until you find a spot where you can get, I mean, and Tiff, you can confirm this is 10,000 a good starting point just to run the ad, test the responses, see who's looking at it, and then being able to confirm that those customers are coming in the door. If you're at $50 or $20, probably not going to get enough eyeballs on your ads to see people turn up at your store. Commit the money, commit the time to do it for several weeks or even several months. And don't look at it every day because that's going to be disappointing. Just start to build the flywheel that's going to drive people over time. And then you're going to start to see the responses. Then you'll begin to measure whether it's valid. Here's the truth too, is this is a tuition that you're paying for your education to learn how to do advertising. So it's not just marketing. It's a learning curve that is really important for you to go through because no one gets it right the first time. Practice, be thoughtful, and be persistent. And you'll start to make some headway and learn what works for your store and what just is either attracting the wrong person or just not getting anybody in the store. So I think, in my mind, because you asked for a number, I think $100 is probably a starting point that would be doable for most stores and, start to get you some information that you can measure.
Yeah, and to clarify, $100, not the whole monthly spend on testing, but that is one specific ad at a time. So if you're testing one at $100, that's a good amount. To answer your other question about what Facebook and Meta dictates is a good quality audience to learn from, since their new AI engine came out, I believe at the end of last year, it's actually changed. So it was like anywhere from 50 to 60,000 or something, like I think up to 80,000. It wanted to learn from that audience. Now with their new AI engine, it literally only needs 8 to 10,000 people to learn from and actually know who to push it to. So it needs a lot smaller audience than it did a couple years ago because of AI. But and I'm sure that number is going to constantly keep going down as the AI gets better and better and learns what behaviors trigger people to scroll, to stop, to shop, whatever the case is. But that's kind of where it sits now in 2026 is about 8 to 10,000 with a $200 budget, as long as you don't do super niche, super specific targeting, like going down to specific addresses and narrowing it to like a mile, you should be able to hit that pretty easily. Now that we've kind of covered the numbers you need to know in order to know if a ad is successful, I want to touch briefly on the difference between boosted posts with Meta and running actual ads on Meta. Like I said, for boosted posts are literally just giving Meta money. There's no value in it unless you're a creative person that's trying to create content for a creative purpose. So some of your social media influencers use boosted posts to kind of, again, just get likes, follows, all of that stuff. But none of that generates any money for us. It's just growing the audience and it might be growing it in the incorrect way. With boosting posts, you can't select what kind of targeting you want to do. I don't believe you could even localize it to you. It's literally just saying, and I think you see it at it's a selling point for Meta. If you have a good organic posts, they'll almost always have a little tagline at the bottom of your post like, "Hey, this is outperforming your other content. Would you like to boost it?" Because they already know from their own algorithm that it works. And if they boost it, it's going to do well still. And it's going to reinforce behavior for you to boost it more. And again, since we know that boosting only gets you likes, follows, and vanity metrics, it's not our goal in our business. We want to bring people through the door. Yes, we do want awareness of it, but we wanna make sure that we have the awareness of the right audience. But a strategic ad, when you get into the Meta Ads Manager or the Business Ads Manager page, this is stuff that you can get way more targeted. You can control the traffic, the conversion, you can see all of these different metrics, and it's built inside of Meta, and it's gonna look a lot like Google Ads if you've messed with Google Ads, some of the same analytics on that side, but you want all that data so that you can retarget people. You can choose your audience, the placement, like I said, the creative. And if the algorithm is telling Meta, like, hey, you should boost this post, that would be a really good indicator to take that content and that creative and make an ad out of it. Because you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you want to build an ad. You can use those metrics to your advantage when they're suggesting, hey, give us money to promote this. I would like to give you money to promote it, but I want to promote it on my terms. So that's what we are doing with a strategic ad. And the nice thing about if a person sees your ad and you track it in Meta, you can retarget them with a more specific ad later. So that's why we want that information over boosting posts. So like I said, boosting is like a shortcut. It usually produces short-term results. You'll be like, oh, I got like 1,000 likes on this one piece of content, or I got 20,000 plus views. But $50 on a boosted post might get you those likes. $50 on a strategic ad could actually bring you 3 new customers through your door that you know seen that ad that are the exact same post. So that's why we want to choose strategic ads over boosting.
Make sure that you're doing the structural stuff first. Just since you mentioned Google Ads, Tiff, is the Google Business Manager. Make sure you take the time to review it, keep it updated, make sure it's accurate. Google likes things that are consistent so that your address is represented properly. If your phone number is represented properly, that your hours have been updated. Google wants you to interact with your listing to update things, to make sure they're accurate. And I don't know how much it comes across in the ads, but just for your organic stuff, just make sure the info that you're supplying Google is current, accurate, updated on a consistent basis? When are your holiday hours? Are you changing anything? You don't have to post on their posts, but it's just going to augment your ads because money spent on advertisement, Tip is talking about sort of organic. If Meta likes an organic post and suggests that you boost it, it's telling you that it has information that Facebook Meta viewers will like. I love the idea of copying that and putting that into a paid ad so that you have more control over it. But it goes the other way is when you learn stuff from paid ads, you want to pull it back to your organic information. Just vice versa is going both ways to make sure you're constantly refining and improving based on your on the ground results, people showing up, and what the social and Google are telling you with responses to what they believe will work for you.
Yeah, since we're talking a little bit about the ad creative and using some stuff that you already have, like organic content, the best targeting in the world does not matter unless nobody stops to look at the ad. So we have to make sure that it is scroll stopping. The attention economy is constantly changing where it's at, changing how it views content, and our brains are getting wired to scroll past things that we don't even give our eyeballs 3 seconds to process. So we have to be able to capture people's quicker. If they're not reviewing it, they're not seeing the call to action. They're not seeing what we want them to, the next steps that we want them to take. So, like I said, if you have that organic piece of content that did really well, if you had a piece about all the different things you can do for itchy, dry skin for your pet, if you boosted that, there's probably no call to action or anything at the bottom. It's probably just an informational infographic. So if we bring it over to a strategic ad, we can use maybe a similar premise of here's 5 things you can try for your itchy dog. If none of these works, come in and talk to us. We could put that call to action on the bottom of it and make it more of a strategic ad. For Meta, video currently outperforms static images consistently. However, static images are a lot easier just to be like, boom, I got the information I wanted and I move on. Whereas a video involves commitment. So you have to be very careful and strategic about how you do your video content because that, like I said, that first 3 seconds is very important. A static image can give you a lot of information at that 3 second glance and potentially stop people. So video content gets promoted by the algorithm more, but the static images are just as valuable. The hook should be in the first 2 seconds of a video for the first line or the first line of the caption, not buried in the text or overlay that nobody reads. Authenticity outperforms polished content. I believe it is Pet Supplies Plus that lets their retailer staff create some of their social content, even though they're a bigger organization. And they outperform PetSmart, Petco, polished studio quality content every single time. They have great feedback on their ads, and it just seems a lot lower budget. So as long as you're authentic and making somewhat good quality, you don't want the sound to be bad. You don't want there to be distracting noises in the background. A real video of your team, your customers, your store, anything like that. It doesn't have to be super polished. You don't have to invest in an outside company to come in $10,000 to film 30-second ads for you. So it can be very candid, but authentic is the goal. And I think especially since in the age of AI, people just want to see real people. We're getting burnt out very quickly on AI generated content and all of that, and also not knowing what is AI and what's not AI. Another creative kind of platform you can use, brands that are in your store already probably already have top performing content. You can use the meta ads library to find ones that you like and brand them and ask for money to promote them. That's what we've done in the past. I'll put the link in the comments below on how to get to the ads library, but you can simply type in Wolf Pupsicle and find their page and see which ads are doing best, and then contact the company, say, "Hey, I want to put my branding on this. Would you be willing to sponsor it if I did a hyper local ad to draw people to your store?" That way you don't have to create anything. All you got to do is simply put available at Braxton's Animalworks at the bottom of the creative so they know where you need to go to get that product. So
Yeah, I just want to comment on your keeping text minimal and the attention economy that you mentioned is this is actually something that has gone on for quite a long time, even prior to social media. And the idea of, would you get a billboard driving by at 55 miles an hour? Like, do you know what it's about? What's the message? What if you only had, you mentioned 3 seconds, which is great. What if you only had a second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds to immediately understand the whole concept of the ad? This is the kind of thinking you have to do. I mean, have you ever watched a 30-second ad and then you go, I don't even know what that was for. The only people that can do that possibly successfully are absolutely solid, ubiquitous household brands. The ad was funny, but you knew that it was Progressive Insurance. That might be useful to them because they're ubiquitous. They've been doing advertising forever. We don't have that brand reach. So anything that we drop in front of a potential customer, you really have to think, and you have to ask detached people, a spouse, a friend, somebody that's not working in your business, that's someone that's not in the pet industry. Open your eyes. 1, 2, 3, close your eyes. Do you know what this was for? It might sound silly, but it's actually a pretty good way to measure the effectiveness of the image, of the headline, of the call to action. Just a way for you to understand a little bit by analogy what people scrolling on their phones are going through. So think quick recognizability, attention stopping, ask them to read the next sentence. And then if they don't know what it's for, it's probably not going to be a really successful ad.
I want to talk quickly about Meta's new algorithm they use for their general viewing platform. So if you've used Meta and you scroll through their shorts, Andromeda is the engine they built. That's an AI engine that's meant to keep you there as long as possible. It's how they're trying to compete with TikTok right now. They rolled it out last year. And what it means is instead of picking interests or demographics or lookalike seeds, the algorithm now reads the ad, whether it's a still image or a video, and decides who sees it. Your creative is the targeting now. So the nice part is when we talk about authentic content and you're already making authentic content, you want to make it with the right customer in mind. Because if it shows a discount seeking customer that's just coming in to use you for coupons or any, like, if that's the content itself, it will find a way to target that person. I don't know how it does that. I'm not going to speak on any of that, but it literally shows you content that would ideally be for me. And it's very scary how accurate it is at sometimes. But if you're building content and your ideal customer is of a certain age, a certain demographic, most likely has maybe a standard breed dog, maybe not a mixed breed dog, or if you're in that farm and feed area, maybe they're the farm looking dogs. You want to build the content around that customer that looks like that because it's going to keep feeding that to those people that associate themselves and relate to that. They're like, hey, this actually looks like me in this video, visiting this store, buying this food. It's getting that specific. So have that in the back of your head when you build the content. Andromeda also works so fast. So I talked about 3 seconds earlier. It literally reads the first 3 seconds of a video ads separately. It prioritizes a creative with strong opening hooks. And this is why we spend so much time on the hook because they want to keep people on their platform longer than TikTok. That is their ultimate goal. So whatever the AI engine thinks will keep people there longer is what they're looking for. We want to create scroll stopping, human scroll stopping content, which will tell the algorithm to promote your ad. This being said, it kind of makes it easier on the campaign creation because it used to be you had to fill out a lot of different demographics when you're trying to target a very specific person. And now you can just put the very specific person you want to target in your ad, and it makes it a little easier. Your campaign structure can be simple. You don't have to overthink, oh, I want to add pet owners with this financial income and maybe a 4-person household or whatever the case is. You can literally just put that family in your ad and it will target families.
I think too, earlier on to several weeks ago, we talked about hiring and creating an employee avatar, and it becomes easier to kind of speak to that avatar. And this is the same idea as if you have an ideal customer avatar, And that just simply means that you've thought about exactly who your ideal customer is. It's actually mentally nice to kind of put a name to it, put a face to it. Like, who are the people that you're serving today that you would love to see 100 more of them, even 10 more of them? It's a husband and wife, and the husband always comes in and they have 2 kids and they have a dog and they have a cat. And like, oh, okay. So now you're speaking to Joe, because Joe comes in every 2 weeks to buy the products. You make recommendations and Joe listens to you. And then when you think about your ads and your ad content and the ad images and the hooks for Joe, like, okay, talk to Joe, show images of Joe. What does Joe like? It just becomes a little bit easier to think about your content from a perspective of your viewer is a person. Your viewer has, a family. Your viewer has some pets. And if you can speak to that one person, you're going to speak to a lot of people just like that person. And the AI is going to help you find them with less struggle, because you have a very clear image in mind of who specifically you're trying to address.
The best thing an independent pet retailer can do under Andromeda is create honest, specific, problem focused content and let the algorithm find the right person for you. You do not need a massive budget or sophisticated targeting strategy. You just need a strong hook, which you'll spend 80% of your time working on, a real story, and enough of a creative variety that the algorithm has something to work with. Your creative is the first thing that decides whether someone stops or keeps scrolling. So, no amount of budget will fix a bad hook or a bad creative. Since we talked a little about Meta's AI, I want to talk about how to use AI within building your actual content itself. And I'm sure this is probably the first thing that most retailers offloaded to AI was generating blog content, generating ad content, generating organic content. So it's probably something you might be familiar with. We just want to bring it in and maybe put some purpose behind it if you haven't already. AI is the fastest way to generate and test ad copy without starting from a blank page. So, like I talked about before, we have to focus 80% of our effort on the hook. This is the first line, first 2 seconds of a video. Its only job is to make someone stop, and nothing else matters if they keep scrolling. So, we want to make them stop and think, hey, this might apply to me. The meat of the ad is gonna be the next part, the value, why they would care, what problem does this solve, what are you offering? And then the final part, the call to action. It's the next step we want them to take. We wanna be specific. We don't really wanna use the generic learn more button on Facebook. We wanna use book your first bath here or book your appointment, something very specific, shop now, whatever the case is for the creative.
If you have a dog or a cat, you've probably had to give it medication. And this is a great analogy, is if you try to feed your pet a pill, some sort of liquid or tablet, you find that it's almost impossible. And the pill is the solution. And if you've been in business for a while, someone comes to you with a problem, you pretty much know the solution. In advertising, we can't give them the solution. We have to wrap the pill in cheese or meat. We have to disguise it from the pet in order for them to get the solution they want. So when Tiff talks about what problem does it solve, we don't offer the solution in the advertisement. We are very specific that we are solving a problem that they're currently experiencing. We wrap it in the meat. They want a resolution. They don't want a solution, right? The dog's skin is itchy. We don't say, well, here's a spray. No, they want this dog's skin to stop itching. And then we can explain what that is later. Don't give them the solution.
That's a great way to frame it. So, how you can use AI to generate these options, you want to get as specific as possible. If you have it, generate me a content calendar for, or an ad calendar for the month of July for my store. It's going to give you some very basic information, going to give you not juicy stuff. You need to give it the details. You need to give it what's worked in the past, what types of posts organically did really, really well. And you can literally add all of that to one prompt. You want to give it your store name, your target customer, the problem you're trying to solve, and the product or service you're trying to promote. And I always have it generate 5 different options, whether it's hooks, call to action, or the meat or anything like that. Because I like to look at things. I like to pick and choose. Helps give me a little creative leeway to feel like maybe I'm using a little bit more of my brand voice. Do the same for the hook, the creative, or the meat and the call to action. Mix and match the best combination and test 2 or 3 versions against each other. You can test them for a week or 2 and then give that data back to AI, and it will tell you which one it would say, like, "Hey, for purposes like this one got a lot of click-throughs, but this one got a lot of conversions." It can help you kinda analyze the minute details that might be the difference between the 2 and help you maybe pick if you chose a CTA that's not performing well, but the hook was really good, which way to mix and match those back. So I like to use AI in the entire process of generating it, not just the content, but also analyzing the content and then putting it back into the engine and just feeding it back to itself. You want to test all of these things. You will not know which hooks work until you run them against each other with a small budget. Even a $20 test, like I said, with 2 versions, will tell you which direction to put the rest of your budget in behind. And over time, you'll build a library of what your audience actually responds to. And that library becomes one of the most valuable marketing assets your store has because you can just keep repurposing and reading that content and recycling it.
On the testing, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, Tiff, is that things change over time, interests change over time. And this library is really, really important because you've already put the time, energy, and effort into building your library and to reuse them over and over. We always have to keep in mind, however, that they will become stale, interests will change, social will change their algorithms. So it's not a bad idea to every once in a while put your A B testing back against existing working ads. So your A B testing would be take a very strong ad in your library, make some new tweaks to it, a new picture, a new headline, a new call to action, not all at once, changing only one thing at a time, and rerun a test against a known entity because that will keep your ads fresh. It'll keep your content fresh. It will help overcome the changes in the algorithms and the changes in your consumer interest and behaviors. So the library is absolutely important, but it's not one and done. We can't put them in the closet and never change them again. It's just our baseline to test against in the future. And I don't know, put it on a quarterly cycle, put it on a monthly cycle. Say, all right, well, let's take our best winners and let's push some slight variations into it. Different color palette, different person, different headline, and then retest against what you know has worked in the past.
Since we know how to use AI to build content and test it and reanalyze it, I want to talk about the audience targeting part, 'cause I feel like this is the part that I get a lot of feedback on of, I don't know how to properly target people. It's something that's like there's a million different options when you look at either Meta or Google. You can literally target down to a household with 2 people and a very specific income and a very specific demographic. So you can get as specific as you physically want. If they've searched pet hairbrushes or anything like that, you can literally add those into your ad to know how to target people if you're doing a grooming ad. So the targeting can be the most overwhelming. Like I said before, Andromeda is changing the landscape of targeting because if you build the creative with the right person in the ad and the right person in mind, it will feed it to those people. But you do still have that custom building on the back end. And the 3 things I want to focus on, not thinking about the Andromeda aspect, is your radius. Because Andromeda is literally just looking at the content. They're not looking at where you want to service it to. They're just looking at who you want to service it to. So you still want to add your local radius targeting if you are just an independent retail store. If you do e-commerce, that's a whole different bag. If you service the country nationally, that's a whole different ad. I'm not going to discuss that right now, but because you'll have to have a completely separate budget that can afford to target people nationally. But if we're just trying to target our ideal customer, usually lives 5 to 7 miles since we are very densely populated area here. That's specific to our store. And again, if you're rural, maybe that's a lot bigger of a thing, but we want to always add this to all of our ads so that we don't service our ad to somebody that lives all the way across country that will never shop at our store. And you can go tighter to start. That'll help stretch that budget a little bit, and you'll start to know if the algorithm's going to the right person, and then you can expand it to when you start to basically get it right. Custom audiences is the next form of targeting, and this is gonna be specific to retargeting ads, which we're gonna get to next, but you wanna connect your website's data and any other platforms that you have. So if you have a CRM that has customer data in it, your POS system, you wanna connect it with Meta and Google so that you can retarget those customers, and that gets very specific, or you can create lookalike audiences based off of those accounts. If you give the Meta your contact list out of your POS that has email addresses that might be associated with their profile pages, it can build lookalike audiences based off of that information. But with those, you're usually running different ads to familiar audiences versus cold audiences. They need different messaging. So, custom audiences are people that already know you or have been associated with you in some way. And then you have lookalike audiences, which I kind of tapped into with the custom audiences. Once you have a custom audience of at least 100 to 200 people, Meta can build a lookalike audience of new people who share similar characteristics. This is one of the most powerful targeting tools available to us because we have the data from our POS systems and we can take that, we can take our top 20% customers and create lookalike audiences based off of the best selling, our biggest fans, essentially.
The audience targeting is really important. I like the idea of what you're saying with starting with a really tight radius. And this is the balance between minimum number of viewers, and Facebook's going to tell you that, Meta's going to tell you that. You can start with a relatively small radius and you start as tight as you want for your starting point when you're beginning to spend some money on it, and you'll have to grow the radius to a point where it's a minimum number of eyeballs that Meta likes to see. I like the way that you really kind of laid this out as general and then custom and lookalike, because all three are important, but your starting point really is just getting your ads out there, seeing what's working, starting your budget and starting your campaigns. You need enough people to start the custom audiences. And like you said, with the point of sale is you you made the point earlier about trying to only attract the people that are going to be your best customers. So when you use your point of sale information, the customers and the ones that you want to attract, it's just finding the people you love, the people you want to replicate, the people you want more of. You don't use your whole list. You only use the list of people that you want to replicate in your store. So I think you wrapped everything up really nicely, Tiff. And this is such an important section here, is to find the right people.
Yeah, and I mentioned a minute ago about retargeting, and this is something I see major manufacturers not doing, and I don't know why, because especially if you sell anything online, you already have the data captured of people that visit your website. So retargeting is retargeting your warmest audience, somebody that's already familiar with you. This can be anybody that likes a post on your Instagram or is just aware that you exist. They've seen an ad in the past. It's why it's so important to install the metapixel on your website so that that data comes back from your website to Meta to know how to build these audiences. It is a little complicated to install if you're not familiar with how to do that. I had Claude walk us through it, and it literally step by step told me exactly where to put it, so I didn't put it in the wrong spot. If you use a third party company that provides your website for you, like Nextball or something like that, they can install it for you, which is really easy and hands off. But anybody that's engaged with you in some way, shape, or form, someone that's opened your email but didn't book an appointment or walk through the door and make a purchase, you can retarget them. These people are not cold. They already know you exist. They retargeting ad just keeps you in front of them until they are ready to take the next step. So like I said, you have to install that metapixel. You can create custom audiences based in meta ads based off the website visitors. Google will already do this for you. If they went from Google to your website, they will already build that in for you. And you can create custom audiences on how warm you actually want to target people. If you have a visitor list of the last 30 days or 60 days, you can retarget them. Anybody older probably has lost interest by now, but that's a good window to pull that list from that have been on your website that maybe have not come into your store. And you're going to run very specific ads to this audience. You don't need to show them, hey, Braxton's Animal Works exists. We have XY services and these types of products. You can get more specific. Did they Google, I was looking for an itchy dog shampoo, and they went to your website, and now your website fed that information to Google, and you can make a targeted ad based off of that particular audience. And that could be off of keywords like itch relief, itch food, all these different types of things that people Google to try and solve that problem. You can create these buckets within Google to get those retargeting ads more specific. But once we have some information collected on them, whether it's from Google or Meta, it's very important to try to start getting more and more specific on what they might be looking for. They could just be looking for pet products and needed a pet store that services that information. That's fine. But if they were searching for very specific things, we want to start targeting and narrowing that funnel and getting more specific so that they feel like that you're relating to them and you're somebody that gets it and knows and can service their problem essentially. So I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great, but how do I actually get people to my website so I know who to target and have someone retarget to? Which is an excellent question. Excellent question. That is exactly where Google comes in. Google Ads works differently for social ads. On social, you'll interrupt somebody. On Google, they're already searching for a solution. It's a lot farther in the funnel when they're on Google. They're looking for, like I said, pet store. They're looking for a product specifically. You want to catch them at that point. You want to say, hey, I do offer these services, or hey, I do offer these products that can solve your problem. Whereas the social media, you just need to make them aware of it. They might have a problem. They might not know you exist as a whole to offer solutions. So if they can go from Meta, see that you exist, and they're like, hey, I actually need this type of product, and they Google it, and then boom, you're there again with the Google ad. We're just reinforcing getting in front of the customer again. So the first one we use is local search ads. This is going to be the keyword searching. So if you're a pet owner and you're looking for a specific product, dog food near me, pet store near me, these are the words you want to trigger on. And you'll select these keywords within this local search ad. They're nice because you only pay when someone clicks. So if you don't want to trigger on a word, you just don't pay for that word. A big one for us is dog adoption type thing. We don't want to be known as an adoption place. We don't want people to call us asking if people can buy or adopt dogs at our store. So we have that as a negative keyword because we do not want to pay for people. We don't want to give people the wrong impression. That's where they can get with our services. These are the highest intent leads. So when you see your local search ads, they'll have very high conversion rates because ideally you're putting yourself out there of like, hey, I want to show that I have these products or that I am a pet store near them. So they'll most likely be your higher conversion rates. But they're the easiest to set up. Like all you have to do is say, I want to show up for these words and not these words. That's about as simple as it gets. And you do your location targeting on top of that. The next is performance max campaigns. So this is Google's AI driven campaign type that runs across YouTube, Gmail, and Maps and other Google services. So these are really nice if you want to get in front of a lot of different places and get that repeated exposure. You can build one video within the ads campaign and it will show across. You provide the assets, the targeting, Google optimizes the placement and the bidding. And we see a lot of exposure in these ads, so we get a lot of views, but usually the conversions are low because people are just getting exposed to us. It's using the interrupted patterns of social media. So these are nice to use in combination because if you get the exposure between Meta and the Performance Max campaigns and people know and see and get familiar and comfortable with your brand, when they go to search for their problem, whatever that is that day, you should show up with your local search ads.
Just want to comment on allowing Google's AI to drive the campaign without oversight is a mistake. When Tiff talks about AI optimizing, sometimes I wonder if they're not just optimizing for spending your money. So it's actually a really important thing to consider because they have more information than we could ever have. So I like the idea of using the Performance Max and using Google's AI, but it's something that you have to babysit and use, as Tiff was saying, the negative keywords, because they'll be delivering them to all sorts of people that match broad search ideas and connections, again, that we really can't see, but you'll be able to go in there and start to see why they're connecting and start to refine and prune and negative keyword the AI. Because again, on the one hand, it's really incredible and they do an excellent job of connecting people that you would have never connected as possible customers. But if you let it run unattended, it will delivering. Tiff said that, your results and your conversions are going to go down, which might not be a problem, but going in there and refining it helps to maintain your selective, your input, so that it's not just running wild on AI and delivering to all possible customers in the region or the area. So just keep that in mind. It's very, very valuable, but it has to be monitored so that it doesn't go all absolutely crazy.
Yeah, that's an excellent point because the last ads manager we used, the third party campaign, I would look into the Google Ads analytics and it would say, hey, if you increase your budget, you will get more conversions or whatever. And I'd have to ask that company, I'd be like, hey, is this advantageous? They're like, no, your ROAS is really good right now. They just want more money. Like, it's a business, they still want more money. But the nice thing about it is they also want you to be successful because then you will spend more money. So, yes, there are bad parts, and the AI, like you said, can take it and run with it. We've gotten calls for things that we don't stock, and it just took a left turn on some of the targeting, and we've had to kind of walk some of that back. But the nice thing is, even though they want our money, they want us to spend more money. So they need to be successful at the same time. So I don't want anybody to think one, Google is the big bad wolf that just wants you to spend more money and they're going to find ways to spend your money essentially so that they earn it. But they want you to spend more money. And if you don't show results for that, why would you go back? Right. The final type of ad we use with Google is the display retargeting ads. We use these less often just because they require more handholding, a lot more of the specific targeting. There's nothing currently built back there, like the Performance Max campaigns to help push these through. And I have a feeling that most likely if Performance Max keeps performing the way it does, this will probably be something that goes away for Google. But currently, we do still use these. These are the banner ads that are on different websites. And this kind of helps extend your reach past Google. They have a lot less lower cost, but they also, you can think of them as your billboard. It's like when you're looking at a blog and reading about content and there's ads running up on the side of it, are you actually paying attention to those? Or are they just servicing as kind of like a, hey, look at me, draw your attention over here from the actual content you want? So there's different types of benefits to that. Again, staying in front of people. But if you pair these with the meta retargeting for maximum coverage, you're keeping your audience warm essentially across a lot more platforms. So today I'd start with local search ads because they're very low cost. You only pay for what the words you want to pay for. They're the easiest to understand and they have the highest intent by the consumer. If you're Googling, where's the closest place to buy pet food and you're that answer, they're probably going to drive to your store. You don't want your competitor to be above you on that if you're closer. Because even if, let's say, they're in point A and your competitor is point C, but you're point B, but your competitor's paying for that word, it will show them and they will just jump right over you, drive possibly right past you. So you want to make sure that you're showing up for the right keywords at the right time. Since we understand ROAS now and understanding kind of the money you can spend, let's talk about the budget pacing and when to kill an ad. Spending money on an ad that is not working is not a strategy. You're basically boosting posts at that point. Knowing when to cut is just as important as knowing when to scale it. So give a new ad at least 5 to 7 days before judging it. So if you're using a very small test subject, like a test AB on the hooks, you want to have at least 7 days for meta. And I believe Google requires 14 days to give you even like the analytics back on it. So meta's a lot quicker again with the new AI engine. but Google needs about 14 days before it decides what is and what isn't working. Watch these metrics daily. Like Dave said, if you're using any kind of AI engine, you don't want to go hands off with it. You want to make sure that you're looking at your cost per click, your click through rate, your cost per result.
When you're you're watching them, but you're not changing anything. The only thing that you would possibly change is, again, pruning who it might be delivered to, but you're not changing the ad at all. This is just to understand what's going on in the background. And if the AI has gone rogue a little bit, that you can prune the negative keywords, you can guide it a little bit more, but you're not changing the headline, you're not changing the creative, you're not changing anything within the ad itself. That's what really needs time.
So if you're finding that your cost per click is high and your click through rate is low, so they didn't click on the actual ad, the creative or the audience is wrong. It gives you a tall tale sign. It's not the budget. If people are clicking but not converting, not coming into the store, not downloading the lead magnet, whatever the case is, landing on the landing pages, the offer is probably the problem. So it's like, hey, come in for this awesome deal, and they land on the landing page and it's only a 10 or 20% discount or something. Something's not clicking on the offer side standpoint. A general rule, if an ad has spent 2 or 3 times your target cost per result and produces zero conversions, turn it off and rebuild it. Start from scratch, test a different hook. Something is just not clicking. And when something works, scale it slowly. Increase the budget by no more than 20% at a time to avoid disrupting the algorithm's optimization. If you increase the budget too quickly, it feeds the algorithm a spike of data because, oh, I can now service it to more people. It gives you false numbers. So you want to do it slow increases, approximately 20%. And like I said, you don't need a big budget to run effective ads. You need the discipline to test small, cut fast, and scale that works. So, the numbers I want you to find out this week inside your business and what you're currently doing. If you're not running any online ads, you're probably doing some form of marketing, but you're going to look at what is your LTV out of your current customer base. What is the average ticket size? What is the average frequency of a customer visiting your store? And what is the average shopping lifespan? Some POS systems might have this data. You might have to pull it out, manipulate it a little bit, see if you can find it. The next number you're going to find is your CAC, your customer acquisition cost. Take your current marketing spend per month and divide that by the new customer accounts or unknown transactions you have a month. So we have new customer pet pass here, or you have just a standard transaction if somebody doesn't want to give us their name or their contact information. You'll take the marketing spend and divide it by those numbers combined. And then finally, what marketing budget? What are you currently spending? Is it working? Are you getting new customers? How much can you allocate to online? So if you're not spending anything, we've got room to grow. If you're spending 3,000 a month, how much do we want to dedicate to that testing? And is that 3,000 a month actually bringing you customers? So if it's not bringing you customers, it's safe to say we probably should just pivot that entire budget into something else if you've been using it for a long period of time. And if it is online ads, we're going to rework the system that we just learned through today. So the last couple things I want you to do is connect your website to your Meta account. I used, again, Claude just walked me through the entire thing because it is somewhat complicated, but it gives you step by step on how to do it. So that way you start tracking the information of people that visit your site or are already in your database. And so you can retarget those people. And then start with one Google search ad. I would maybe spend 500 on a Google ad just by itself. And again, have Claude set this up for you. There's really no excuse. It's super easy to use. I'm sure the other AI chatbots can do that for you. I'm just most impressed with how much hand holding Claude does with me. But there's really no excuse anymore. Paid ads are not where you start building your marketing. They are where you pour fuel on something that already is working. So if you have that organic content, you have your lead magnets, you have your email nurture sequences in place, ads are what accelerate all of that working.
I think too is like when we think about new spends and we're like, all right, well, kind of tight on money and maybe payroll's tough. It depends where you're at with your business right now. And this just seems to be another expense to add on to all of your expenses. I like to think about advertising. If you're not spending it, you're having a hard time driving customers into the store. And look, the people who are winning are spending money. And the big boys, the online spenders, the big brands, your Petco, your PetSmart, your Pet Supplies Plus, any of these large chains, they are spending the money. So you can't do nothing. But I think another way to look at it is you probably have money hidden in your budget somewhere that maybe you're still doing yellow pages, hopefully not, but maybe you're doing local promotions that are not really producing. You're putting money into a local flyer that no one reads. You're putting money into local coupon mailers that you get two back out of thousands that they spread around. Like everything should be a test. But if you don't feel like you have the money in your budget to start to put towards these ads, look more closely at where you are spending and do a really, really close analysis to see if you're getting the return on that money. If you don't feel like it's producing the returns, it's time to shift that budget from one area to a test in Google or social advertising. It's well worth it. If you're not doing it yet, you're definitely missing out on reaching potential customers that don't know about you, that don't know that you can help them, that you can provide the services, the foods, the supplies that the pets need. But again, if you feel like your budget's tight, take a close look at where you're already spending money and decide if it can be better placed in these outreach programs through Google, through social, because it's so important for you to be there. It is definitely the new yellow pages. It's definitely the way to get in front of pet owners in your local community that don't yet know about you. So don't give up if you feel like your budget is tight. Find the money within your budget that you're already spending and shift it over here.
That's a excellent closing point because if you have a marketing budget already and you spend X dollars on sponsoring a local team or a banner at a sports game or something like that, something that you can't track if somebody's seen it there and came and converted to your store, some kind of untrackable metric. Like I said, those billboards, you have no idea who's seen that content and came in because of it. That would be an easy one for me that I would just cut immediately, because these types of ads will give you that feedback loop. Yes, you're doing the feel good sponsorship, but when money's tight, I'd rather have ads that give me the feedback and the conversions that I'm looking for. So we're wrapping the digital presence. If you haven't seen any other ones, I'll link all of the other videos below. But next week, we're jumping into an entirely different topic, something that Dave loves talking about. So, store operations and systems. The core premise of this topic is to basically, if you are the owner, get yourself out of the business and let the things run on their own. We're building SOPs that your team will follow, that your team can execute on without you being there. And that way you can work on growing your business essentially. So next week, all about how to build SOPs that people actually read, actually follow. The week after that, we're going to talk about auditing your systems and improving your systems. The following week, we're talking about reducing owner dependency specifically and running your store without you in it. Some of the things you can start offloading if you do a lot of repetitive tasks. And then the final one's going to be like opening, closing, daily routines, how to build things in some easy softwares in AI to help create consistency and make your staff's life easier. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Dave, for chatting with us. And we'll see you guys next week.